If you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, this story is for you. What happens when a mother's love is pushed too far? Stay till the end. Because this revenge didn't just balance the scales. It rewrote them. And if you love true stories of justice served, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who knows what betrayal feels like. My name is Mae. Most people around town just call me Auntie Mae. The woman who never misses Sunday service, who bakes pies for the church raffle, who remembers everyone's birthdays. I've lived in the same small New England town for over 40 years, in the same white clapboard house with the same creaking porch swing. I raised my son, Daniel. There, just the two of us after his father left when he was 10. Daniel was my reason to keep breathing through long winters and empty beds. I worked 2 jobs. Nursing during the day, diner shifts at night. To keep him in good schools, clean shoes, and summer camps he never knew I could barely afford. He grew up kind, quiet, sharp as a tack. When he graduated college, engineering degree in hand, I cried so hard I embarrassed him in front of everyone. He laughed, wiped my tears, and said, "Mom, someday, you'll be crying like this at my wedding." I didn't know then that when that day came, I'd be crying for an entirely different reason. It started 2 years before the wedding. That's when Daniel met her, Samantha. She came from a family that didn't know struggle. Her father owned a chain of auto dealerships. Her mother was a socialite with a practiced smile and expensive perfume that made me sneeze every time she hugged me. From the beginning, Samantha was polite, but in the way people are polite when they think they're doing you a favor. She'd say things like, "Oh my, that's such a quaint little house." Or, "You're such a strong woman, doing it all on your own." Always with that sugary undertone of superiority. Daniel was smitten. I could see it. The way he looked at her like she was light itself. I didn't blame him. She was beautiful, charming, and her family, well, they made him feel important. For a while, I swallowed it. I told myself to be happy for him. He'd found love. That's all a mother wants, right? But soon, things began to shift. Calls that used to come every night turned into texts once a week. Dinners turned into canceled plans. Then, subtle little boundaries started appearing. Polite ones, at first. "Mom, maybe don't bring up Dad when Samantha's around. It makes her uncomfortable." "Mom, we're spending Christmas with her family this year. They already planned everything." And eventually, "Mom, could you maybe not talk about money stuff in front of them?" Each word cut deeper than he knew. But I smiled through it. I always did. Because that's what mothers do. They endure quietly. Then came the engagement. The night Daniel told me, I thought my heart would burst from joy. He showed up at my door with champagne and that shy, boyish grin I'd missed so much. She said, "Yes, Mom." I hugged him. I screamed. I danced around the kitchen like a fool. I even called my sister, Linda, and told her to get ready for the wedding of the decade. But the moment Samantha's parents got involved, the tone changed. The wedding planner, an elegant woman named Renee, started referring to the family in a way that somehow didn't seem to include me. I wasn't part of decisions. I wasn't even part of the email threads. When I offered to help with costs, Samantha's mother laughed and said, "Oh, Mae, that's adorable, but we've got it covered." I told myself it was fine. Maybe they just wanted to relieve me of the burden. Until one day, I found out from Facebook that the bridal shower had already happened. Photos of Samantha surrounded by smiling women, including my sister Linda. I wasn't invited. When I called Linda, she stammered, "Oh my, they said it was just for close friends." "Close friends?" I asked. "I'm his mother." There was silence on the other end. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at Daniel's old baseball glove on the shelf. The one I'd bought with my last $20 one Christmas. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe I wasn't really part of his new life at all. The weeks before the wedding were chaos. I tried to stay involved, offering to help with floral arrangements, to host out-of-town guests, anything. But every offer was met with a polite wall. "Thank you, May, but it's all under control. Don't worry. We've got the seating handled. You'll get your invitation soon." The invitation finally came. 2 weeks before the wedding. A simple cream envelope, embossed with gold. The ceremony, St. Peter's Church, Saturday, 3:00 p.m. I remember holding it to my chest and whispering, "Finally." I bought a new dress. Navy blue, simple but elegant. I even got my hair done for the first time in years. The morning of the wedding, I woke early, made coffee, and stared at the photo of Daniel as a little boy, missing his front teeth, frosting on his cheek from his 10th birthday cake. "Look at you now," I whispered. "You did it." I left home at 1:30 p.m. It was only a 20-minute drive to the church. But halfway there, traffic came to a crawl, construction detours, and rain pouring in sheets. My heart hammered against my ribs as the minutes ticked by. 1:50, 2:05, 3:05. When I finally pulled up at the church, I saw cars lined up along the street. The sound of music was faint but rising. From inside, I ran through puddles, heels slipping, heart in my throat. When I reached the doors, they were closed. Through the glass, I saw the procession already walking down the aisle. And then applause. Laughter. The priest's words muffled through wood. By the time I stepped inside, it was too late. Daniel and Samantha were kissing. The crowd was standing, clapping, and I was standing in the back alone. When Daniel finally noticed me, his face changed. Not guilt, not sorrow, annoyance. He mouthed, "Why are you late?" I felt my knees weaken. I turned and walked out. Outside, I sat in my car until the rain stopped. My makeup streaked, my dress damp. I stared at my hands, trembling, and thought they planned this. I didn't know how. I didn't know why. But something deep in my gut whispered that this wasn't an accident. And I would find out the truth, because no one shuts a mother out like that and walks away clean. When I got home from the wedding, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat there in the dark, still wearing my navy blue dress, the hem damp from the rain, my hair limp from humidity, the bouquet I'd brought, a small arrangement of lilies I'd bought myself, lay across the kitchen counter, petals beginning to wilt. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like judgment. I replayed the ceremony in my head over and over. The sound of their laughter without me. The smug faces of Samantha's family, Daniel's irritated glance when he saw me standing in the back. When I finally crawled into bed that night, my phone buzzed. It was a text. From Daniel. "Daniel, sorry about earlier. Things got mixed up with timing. You okay?" I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the screen. Mixed up with timing. That was it. After all those years of working double shifts to pay for his education, of sitting alone every Christmas when he was too busy with new traditions, of missing birthdays because his fiancée didn't like crowded family stuff, that's all I got? No apology. No explanation. Just a line that said everything without saying anything. "You weren't supposed to be there on time." I didn't respond. The following week, I kept to myself. The neighbors came by asking how the wedding was. I smiled and lied. It was lovely. But inside, something was unraveling. Sleep became impossible. Every night, I'd sit by the window, staring out at the streetlights, while that one image replayed. Daniel and Samantha laughing, the doors shut between us. On the 5th night, I broke. I drove to Linda's house. My sister opened the door, looking startled. "May, it's almost midnight." I didn't care. "You were at the wedding early, weren't you?" Her eyes darted away. "May, maybe we shouldn't." "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice trembling. "Did they tell you a different time?" She sighed. "They said the ceremony started at 2. They told everyone on Samantha's side to come early because they were doing pre-photos. They said you knew." My chest tightened. "They said I knew." Linda looked guilty. "I thought maybe you decided not to come early. I didn't want to stir trouble. I turned away, the pieces clicking into place. They'd told everyone else 200. My invitation, 300. They'd done it on purpose. Samantha's family didn't want me there when the guests arrived. They didn't want me in the pictures. They didn't want me. The realization was cold and sharp, like a knife sliding under my ribs. Days turned into weeks, and the humiliation festered. Daniel called a few times, left voicemails I didn't return. When he finally came by in person, I was pruning roses in the front yard. He stepped out of his car, wearing that confident smile that used to melt me when he was little. "Mom," he said softly, "why haven't you called?" I kept trimming the bush, snipping each stem with careful precision. "Busy," I said flatly. He sighed. "Look, about the wedding. Things got mixed up. You know how crazy weddings get." I turned to face him. "Daniel, they sent me an invitation with the wrong time." Oh, he frowned. "Mom, I doubt that was intentional." "Really?" I said, voice shaking. "Your own mother misses the biggest moment of your life, and you think it's just a mix-up." He hesitated. "Maybe it was Samantha's parents. They handled most of the invitations. I'll talk to them." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, don't bother. Wouldn't want to upset your perfect in-laws." "Mom," he said, frustrated, "you're making this a bigger deal than it is." That line. That cursed line. I dropped the pruning shears onto the grass. "A bigger deal. Daniel, I raised you alone. I sacrificed everything for you. And you let them shut me out of your wedding like I was some stranger off the street." He looked uncomfortable. "Mom, please. Samantha's parents just wanted everything to go smoothly." "Smoothly," I repeated, voice breaking. "Smoothly means excluding me." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way." The ultimate dismissal. When he left, I went inside and locked the door. Then I cried until my eyes burned. That night, I dreamt of the wedding again. But this time, when I opened the church doors, no one was there. Just empty pews, echoing silence, and my son's voice somewhere far away saying, "You don't belong here." I woke up gasping. Something changed that morning. The grief turned into something sharper. Focused. If they wanted me erased from Daniel's life, I'd make sure they'd remember me in ways they'd never forget. But revenge, real revenge, can't be rushed. So I waited. Months passed. Daniel and Samantha settled into their new house. A sprawling, 2-story colonial that her parents had gifted them. I kept tabs quietly, through whispers in town and Linda's occasional updates. Then came the baby announcement. They were expecting. Linda called me the moment she found out. "Ma, they're going to have a baby! Isn't that wonderful?" I said nothing. She hesitated. "They'll probably reach out soon, you know, to make things right." But they didn't. Instead, I found out from a mutual friend that Samantha's mother had been telling everyone, "Mae's a bit unstable." The stress got to her. "We just try to keep things calm for Daniel." Unstable. That word burned into my skull like acid. I realized then, they weren't just excluding me. They were rewriting me. Turning me into the villain. The quiet, dependable Auntie Mae was now the overbearing, bitter mother. The liability. And my son, he didn't even question it. The baby shower came and went. I wasn't invited. I sent a small gift anyway. A hand-knitted blanket with Daniel's initials stitched into the corner. No note. No return address. 3 weeks later, the blanket showed up on my doorstep. No message. Just folded neatly in a box. That's when I stopped crying. That's when something inside me, something maternal and warm, finally died. And what grew in its place was colder. Smarter. The first step in revenge isn't action. It's patience. You watch. You listen. You wait until the cracks start to show. And soon enough, they did. Daniel and Samantha's, perfect. Marriage wasn't as perfect as they made it seem. Money was tight. Her father's business had taken a hit. Daniel's company laid off half its engineers. And then there were whispers about Samantha's temper, her drinking, her control issues. When their baby was born, things looked happy for a while. But I knew that kind of happiness. The desperate kind people wear like armor. Then one evening, Linda called again. "You'll never guess what I heard," she whispered. "What?" "Daniel and Samantha are having problems. Big ones." I didn't respond right away, but something in my chest stirred. A faint spark of the power I'd lost. Linda went on. "She's controlling everything. His job, his friends, even his bank account. And she doesn't want him visiting anyone without her." I sat back, a slow, cold satisfaction spreading through me. "Well," I said softly, "maybe it's time Daniel learns what it feels like to be left out." The first move was subtle. I started reaching out to people around them. The church ladies, mutual friends, old neighbors. Nothing direct. Just gentle reminders. "Oh, I haven't seen Daniel in so long. Hope everything's all right. Such a shame Samantha doesn't come around anymore. Maybe she's overwhelmed." It spread like wildfire. Gossip has a way of multiplying in small towns. Soon people were whispering about her, not me. About how she was keeping Daniel isolated. How she didn't let him see his family. I didn't need to say much. The truth, or pieces of it, did all the work for me. And slowly, the narrative started to shift. But revenge, real revenge, isn't complete until the person who hurt you feels the same kind of isolation you once did. So I waited for the perfect moment to make Samantha's world collapse. Publicly, elegantly, and without leaving a single fingerprint. And when that chance came, I took it. But before I tell you what I did, you need to understand just how far they pushed me first, because what happened next, what Samantha did, wasn't just cruel. It was personal. End of part 2, cliffhanger, Samantha takes her cruelty one step further, provoking the final transformation of Mae from grieving mother to cold strategist. Would you like me to continue with part 3? The turning point in revenge planning, where Auntie Mae begins executing her plan step by step, manipulating appearances and allies until her revenge takes shape. You said continue, ChatGPT said. Parrot THRE. THETRANTAEVNGPAND2 400 words. When I say she crossed a line, I don't use the word lightly. People throw it around like confetti. But this was a single, precise cut meant to bleed me out. One afternoon, about 8 months after the wedding, I found a letter tucked beneath my welcome mat. No return address, thick paper, embossed with a crest I recognized immediately. The same crest on the stationery Samantha had once used to invite people to a fundraiser. My hands shook as I slid it open. Inside was a single sheet with 3 words: "Do no contati Danielle," that's all. No signature, no explanation. Just those 3 words in blunt, black ink. For a long time, I sat on the kitchen floor, the envelope pieces scattered like confetti around me, and listened to my own breathing. The house sounded enormous. The walls full of memories, empty chairs, and the soft hum of the refrigerator. The world outside the window carried on. The postman, the kids on bikes. The church bell. Unaware that somewhere inside a small house a woman's life had shifted on its axis. I thought about the blanket I'd knitted and the box it returned in. I thought about the photo album on my shelf, with 100 small moments of a life I'd given away. And something in me finally decided, if they wanted me erased, they'd have to work for it. Revenge isn't about making noise. It's about changing the music. It's about composing a new melody that everyone hums without realizing the tune has been rewritten. First, I needed information. I started keeping a little black notebook, soft leather, the kind I used to carry when Daniel was small to jot down phone numbers and school events. I put it in my purse. I began making lists, names, dates, patterns. I noted when Samantha scheduled events, who attended, and who always seemed nervous around her. I learned that she favored certain florists, that she hosted brunches on Sundays, that she liked to have her errands done by someone who could be summoned with a text. I learned to listen to the cadence of people's speech. The way they paused before mentioning her name, the way they smiled too quickly. I also learned to watch Daniel without looking like I was watching him. I'd run into him at the grocer, at church, at the hardware store. Sometimes he'd be smiling, carrying a bag of diapers, and other times his eyes were hollow, the lines at his mouth deeper than they used to be. Once, as he unloaded groceries into his car, he lingered near the trunk and I saw papers. Bank statements, mortgage notices, peeking out like a secret. He glanced around and I saw the weight he carried. One evening, he stopped by my house. He looked older, tired. I invited him in for tea, the way I'd once invited him in from the rain when he was a boy. He sat at my kitchen table, fingers tapping the mug, not meeting my eyes. "Mom," he said finally, "I have to tell you something." My heart stuttered. "What is it?" I asked, careful, as if the wrong question could cost me everything. He swallowed. "We're going to take a short break." "A break?" I repeated. My mind scrambled. "Breaks are for vacations, not marriages." He nodded. "Samantha and we need space. She's been controlling. She's said things about my family that aren't true. She's been asking for money I don't have." Relief and dread collided inside me in equal measure. "So you're leaving?" I whispered. "I don't know. I don't want to make a mistake." His voice sounded like someone trying to balance on a narrow beam. He reached across the table and took my hand, and for a moment I felt the old boy who used to scrape his knees and come home crying. "I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you at the wedding," he said. I thought I was protecting everyone. The admission hurt and healed me all at once. He wasn't a villain. He was someone caught between fear and hope. Someone who had been taught to keep the peace at the cost of his own truth. That night, I walked him to his car and watched taillights disappear into the dark. I felt the familiar maternal urge to fix things. Like when I used to stitch his jeans after a rough tumble. But fixing would have to be more cunning than a needle and thread. Revenge requires allies, and in our town, allies are often found in the margins. The church secretary who sees everything, the retired mailman who knows who visits who, the hairdresser who hears secrets between rinses. I started gently gathering confidences. Little favors. A pie for the pastor who'd officiated their wedding. Extra cookies for the choir director. A bag of homemade soup left anonymously at the neighbor's doorstep. People opened up. They started telling me things they'd never told anyone else. It's amazing what people will say when they don't feel judged. They'll reveal the shape of their loneliness like a map. From the hairdresser, I learned that Samantha had a tendency to leave her phone on the counter when she felt herself getting impatient. The ladies joked about it, but I filed the detail. From the choir director, I learned about a charity gala Samantha's family would attend the following month. From the mailman, I found out the nights her house was empty because she took weekend trips with friends. All these small details began to stack into a scaffolding. Revenge needs scaffolding because you're building something that must stand under its own weight. No theatrics, no mud. I also began to plant seeds. Harmless questions, half jokes. To the florist I mentioned how Samantha's centerpieces looked predictable, almost mass-produced. To a mutual friend I lamented how quickly Daniel had changed after meeting her. People started seeing cracks, little lines in the veneer that made them look twice. While I worked outward, I was also working inward. Nights where I used to lie awake replaying the wedding were now spent sketching plans. I made contingency lists. If X happens, do Y. If Samantha responds, do Z. I sharpened my patience like a blade. Revenge isn't just about the act. It's about timing and weather. You wait for a storm the other person hasn't prepared for. The turning point came almost by accident. An invitation to the very gala Samantha's family attended. It arrived in my mailbox like a piece of fate. The charity was one I'd supported quietly for years, and the ticket was expensive. I almost didn't go, but something in me, A little spark of daring said go. I went. I dressed in the navy dress again, the one that had been damp with rain at Daniel's wedding. A quiet, defiant armor. The gala hall smelled of perfume and lilacs. Glinting chandeliers reflecting in the polished shoes of people who measured life by their reflections in others' eyes. Samantha floated through the room, a practiced smile in place, her laugh a little too loud, her hand resting possessively on Daniel's arm. Her parents were there, imposing and glossy, conversing as if they owned the room. I moved through the crowd like a ghost who had finally grown legs. I greeted people, handed out my small talk like a practiced diplomat, and listened. People are so full of themselves at galas, they drop truths between the hors d'oeuvres. And then I found my opening. Samantha slipped away to a quiet corner to take a call, her phone on speaker. It echoed softly across the velvet seating. Only I heard it clearly. "Don't worry," she said in that crisp voice. "I made sure the accounts are in my name. He'll sign whatever I ask. It's simpler this way." I felt the air thicken. The words in my name burned through me. I moved closer without thinking. The call ended. She laughed as if nothing had happened. People drifted back to their conversations. Daniel looked at his phone and smiled, oblivious. I walked away, pulse thrumming. That phrase, accounts in my name, it was the lever I needed. If she was manipulating his finances, then the protection of his family, his past, was at risk. The town would care. People love a story where the underdog is protected from the predator. For the next few weeks, I orchestrated small exposures, anonymous notes to a local financial advisor, pointing out odd transfers. A whispered conversation in the grocery store, to a woman who volunteered at the community center, casually mentioning how surprised everyone was that Daniel seemed cut off from his old friends. No lies, only truths rearranged and set like traps. People started asking questions. The pastor called Daniel to see if everything was all right. An old friend showed up at his workplace with a casserole and an awkward, concerned smile. Rumors, those small, cowardly creatures, began to migrate toward Samantha, nesting where there was warmth. But I wasn't done. The scaffolding needed a final plank, undeniable proof that Samantha had been controlling, not just charming. And I had a plan for that proof. The plan, when I finally let it form fully in my hands, had a simplicity that felt like poetry. It would be public, but it wouldn't be cruel in a way that made me the villain. It would be surgical, undeniable, and, most importantly, clean. No broken windows, no shattered photographs, no screams in the night. Just a clear line drawn, and a spotlight put on the truth. My first step was to secure access. I needed someone inside who would be willing to talk. That someone turned out to be a quiet housekeeper who worked for Samantha's family. Young, overworked, grateful for a kind word. I offered her soup, covering her hands with mine while she cried about the long hours. People tell you everything when they need warmth. She confessed how she'd seen bank statements, how she'd heard Samantha speak sharply about transferring accounts and limiting access. She trusted me. I promised to help. Everything else flowed after that, like a river fed by a new tributary. I gathered documents, dates, and a few photographs. Mundane things that, when aligned, would become an accusation too mechanical to deny. I had someone discreetly scan papers at the bank where Samantha's parents kept accounts. I had the housekeeper record a few of Samantha's offhand comments on her phone. Snippets that, alone, might seem petty, but together painted a picture of a woman assembling a life around control. I will admit something now, something ugly and true. There were nights when I lay awake and wondered if I'd become the kind of person I once despised. Someone who would manipulate and use others to get what she wanted. I thought of Daniel's little face, the way he used to press his forehead against mine when a storm rattled the windows. I thought of my empty chair at his wedding. I thought of the blanket returned to me like a slap. In the end, whatever doubts I had were drowned by a deeper truth. They had started it. They had written me out of the story, and now they'd have to watch as their own pages burned. I had one more piece to arrange, a moment to set all the proof in motion. It would happen at a community meeting where Samantha's family would be present, where neighbors and friends would gather to hear about the local charity's budget. It was public, official, and, best of all, sober. People would not be easily swayed by theatrics. They wanted facts. I would give them facts. As the night of the meeting approached, I felt the old, raw excitement of someone standing on the edge of a cliff, both terrified and certain. I packed my little black notebook into my purse, along with the scanned copies on a little USB stick wrapped in a paper napkin. I donned a coat that had once belonged to Daniel's father and walked out into the October air, feeling the crispness like permission. When I reached the hall, lights glowed like a promise. Inside, faces were familiar, some wary, some curious, some complacent. Samantha arrived late, her smile precise. Daniel beside her like a man who'd been half awake. Her parents occupied the front row, polished and bright as ever. I took my seat, folded my hands, and waited, because in this town, people love order. And when order is threatened, they listen. The meeting started like any other. Polite chatter. The scent of coffee and paper cups. The shuffle of people settling into metal chairs. A banner stretched across the stage: community growth and future planning forum. On the surface, it was about budgets and civic responsibility. But I had come for a different kind of accountability. Samantha was radiant, even in the fluorescent light. Her confidence dripped from every gesture. Daniel sat beside her, polite and tired. His hand rested on his knee, not hers. Her parents took seats at the front, all pearl smiles and expensive posture. I stood near the back, my coat folded neatly on my lap, my purse heavy with what I carried inside. The meeting moved through the motions: introductions, applause, small announcements about park renovations and school donations. People clapped in that absent-minded, rehearsed way communities do when they're not really listening. And then came the moment. The committee chair, a man named Harold, announced that Samantha would be presenting the new charity initiative. She rose gracefully, as if her life had always been a stage, and began to speak. Tonight, I'm proud to present our family's financial commitment to the Education Uplift Fund, she said, her voice honeyed. Together, we're building a legacy that ensures a better future for all of us. Her smile lit up the room. The crowd nodded, impressed. But I was watching Daniel. He sat stiffly, his jaw tight. He looked hollow. The boy who used to whisper to me about how he wanted to design bridges that connected people now looked like he was standing on one, watching it crumble beneath him. When the presentation ended, applause filled the hall. Samantha thanked everyone graciously and handed Harold a sealed envelope labeled financial documents and transparency record. That was my cue. I stood. My knees didn't shake. My voice was steady when I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question before we adjourn?" The room quieted. Heads turned. Samantha's eyes flicked to me, and for a heartbeat, I saw the faintest shadow of recognition. The ghost of a woman she'd thought long erased. Harold blinked. "Of course, May. You've been part of this community longer than most of us. Go ahead." I walked to the front slowly, each step measured, the way one approaches a grave. I pulled the little black notebook from my purse and set it on the podium. "I think the community deserves to know," I began, "that the funds you're about to entrust to this family might not be as transparent as you think." A murmur rippled through the hall. Samantha's smile froze. Porcelain perfect. I continued. "For months, I've been concerned about certain financial transfers made under the names of charitable donations. Transfers that, as of 3 weeks ago, were redirected to private accounts belonging to Mrs. Samantha Reeves, formerly Samantha Holt." A gasps. People shifted in their chairs. Samantha's mother's hand darted to her pearls. "That's a lie," Samantha said sharply, her voice cutting through the room. Then you won't mind if I show the documentation? I said. From my purse, I pulled the USB and handed it to Harold. Everything's on there. Recorded statements, copies of transfers, even correspondence from the bank. I urge you to check before accepting any additional funding. Harold looked at me confused, then turned to Samantha. Mrs. Reeves, would you care to respond? Samantha laughed, brittle and desperate. This is absurd. She's my husband's mother. She's been unstable. Everyone knows that. The word hit the room like a stone through glass. The same word that had echoed in whispers behind my back. I met her gaze and smiled. Unstable, yes, but thorough. Daniel rose slowly. His eyes were locked on me, then on the documents Harold had projected onto the screen behind the stage. The audience gasped again as figures appeared. Transaction logs, signatures, emails. Her emails. One by one, the layers of Samantha's perfection peeled away. The color drained from her face. You had no right. I had every right? I said softly. You tried to erase me. But the thing about ghosts, Samantha, is that they don't disappear when you close the door. They watch, they remember, and sometimes they haunt. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Harold called for calm, the murmurs rising to argument. Samantha's father tried to demand order, but people had already begun whispering names and numbers. The pastor, the same one who'd married them, stood up and said quietly, "This is serious. We can't ignore this." Daniel was pale. His voice broke as he said, "Is it true, Sam?" She turned on him. "Don't you start with me. You never believed I was good enough for you or your mother. Don't make this about her," he said, voice low, trembling. For the first time, Samantha faltered. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the line she'd crossed. The hall was silent. Her parents began collecting their things, trying to salvage dignity from ruin. I left before it ended. I walked out into the cold night air, the hum of fluorescent lights fading behind me. The stars were sharp, the air clean. My steps echoed on the sidewalk like punctuation marks. I didn't look back. 2 days later, Daniel showed up at my door again. He didn't knock. Just stood there, eyes red from sleeplessness. I opened the door without a word and gestured for him to come in. He sat at the same kitchen table where he'd once confessed his doubts, only now there was no hesitation in his voice. "She's gone," he said. "Her parents covered what they could, but the bank's investigating. I didn't know she was moving the money." I nodded, pouring tea. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. "I should be angry," he said quietly. "But I'm not. I'm free." He looked at me then, and for the first time in years, I saw my son. Not the man trying to fit into someone else's mold, but the boy who once built bridges out of sticks in the backyard. "Mom," he said, voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." I reached across the table, my fingers brushing his knuckles. "You were trying to survive, Daniel. We all make choices when we think love means silence. I just learned to make mine louder." He laughed, a shaky, genuine laugh that melted the last of the frost between us. Months passed. The investigation concluded quietly. No formal charges, but reputations crumbled. Samantha moved away, her parents' business suffered, and their perfect family image fractured beyond repair. Daniel stayed in town. He rebuilt. He visited every Sunday for coffee. Sometimes we talked about the past. Sometimes we didn't. We planted a small tree in the yard together, a maple, its roots still thin and new. One afternoon, as we watched it sway in the wind, he said, "You know, everyone's talking about what you did. Half the town thinks you're a genius. The other half thinks you're terrifying." I smiled faintly. Maybe both can be true. He looked at me with a mix of awe and love. "Did you plan all of it?" I didn't answer directly. "Let's just say revenge is a slow bloom, Daniel. You water it with patience, not anger." He chuckled. "You're something else." I looked at the maple tree, its leaves flickering gold in the sunlight. "No, honey, I'm just someone who refused to disappear. There's a strange peace that comes after justice. It isn't fireworks or triumph. It's quiet, clean, like the world finally exhales after holding its breath for too long. People often ask if revenge makes you feel better. The truth: it doesn't erase the pain. It just gives it shape. It takes what they tried to bury in you and turns it into something they can't ignore. I didn't destroy them. I simply let the truth do what it always does. Burn slow, steady, and without mercy. When I walk past St. Peter's Church now, I still remember the day I stood outside in the rain, listening to their laughter without me. But the sound doesn't hurt anymore. It reminds me of who I became afterward. A woman who learned that silence is not the same as forgiveness. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't vengeance at all. It's being the last one standing when their lies finally fall silent. If you've ever been underestimated, erased, or betrayed, remember Auntie Mae. Revenge doesn't always need fury. Sometimes it just needs truth. If this story hit close to home, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember their own power. Because in the end, silence is only golden if you choose it.